What up, though? It is said that our story starts in 1619 here in America or in the Americas. And when I say our, I mean the people that are termed today Black Americans or African Americans or colored, Negro, mulatto, and such. 1619 has become a business. I spoke about 1619 in a show I did called Freaky Tales 1619. Title's a little longer, but you can find it. But something earlier that happened was in the 1400s. Because if our beginning in America was said to be 1619, America's beginning was in the 1400s with a character called Columbus. Yeah, there's different pronunciations of his name. I don't care. Who cares? For the sake of the show, we'll say Columbus. I don't care if his name was Christoffel or Cristobal or whatever his name was. I don't care if he was born in Italy and his parents, his mom and daddy was Portuguese. I don't care. I don't care if he had allegiance to the Spanish crown. I don't care. Supposedly, this is when America begins, the place where your family's from, the place where your family was doing their thing before Columbus landed on our shores. So, this picture right here, it shows Columbus landing on the American soil. On the left, it shows a couple of his servants. They could be his servants. I don't know who they are. They could be his boyfriends. I don't know. Because, when he came, he brought all manner of things with him. It was a lot of reasons why he came. I don't know all of them. He was a man. Why would a man set sail in those times and travel? Same reason maybe today that a man travels. But he was coming for soil, or as they call it, land. He seems to have been a dreamer, someone who was ambitious and always wanted to know more and wanted more. He also wanted gold. He also wanted women or children. And probably the most important thing that he wanted was to make Christians of all those who weren't. Hence, he wanted you to believe what he believed. Do you believe what he believed? In this picture right here, in this illustration, we see it says the section I have highlighted says America. The first sentence says his name. This is in another language. It says his name and it says Italian, which I'm sure he was born in Italy. But like I said, his mom and daddy wasn't Italian. So he's not Italian. Just like Many of you think that just because you was born somewhere, that means that's what you are, which is not true. Or that's where you're from. Now, you're from America. We're from America. This is our soil. However, the portion of America is just different. Now, I know. Lines on the map, right? It's all America. So the people in this illustration, he's landing on, I forgot if the first place he landed was Borinquen or Puerto Rico. I forgot if that was the first place he landed, but he's landing on American soil, the Americas. And as you can see, the people aren't Native Americans. The Native Americans that have the big feathered headdresses on, they wear like the buckskin pants and all that stuff. All of them dress exactly alike for their events and powwows and such. They all have their costumes all over what we term as North America. But see, us, the only Americans that there ever was, we don't all dress alike. But no matter where you go across America, guess what? You know who we are. In this illustration, you see the Americans who Columbus is approaching. He's planting his flag, or the flag of his masters. And as you can see, him and his servants are fully clothed. They're in a tropical place and they're fully clothed. This is how they get out. 3, 4, 5-piece suits on, ruffle, turtlenecks and whatnot. Hats on, shawls, thigh-high boots. Hard bottoms on the boots. Just ill-equipped for the tropical weather of the soil that he's standing on. And you see the inhabitants, the Americans, the American Indians. They have on typical American Indian attire. Although, again, American Indians dress differently. If you were in Florida, you dress differently than if you were in Alabama or if you were in New York or if you were in California. Or as where he's at, I believe this is Puerto Rico. See, these aren't the Puerto Ricans that you see mostly today, just like the people who they term Mexicans aren't the indigenous Mexicans, because the indigenous Mexicans of that place that we term as Mexico, the indigenous people, they're not trying to leave. The indigenous people, and not all of the other people are trying to leave, but the indigenous people, some of them are from here. And some of us are from there. You rarely see those people. Those people look like the people on this illustration. See, the Mexicans and the people who they put out front today, and the Native Americans that they put out today. See, we're talking about Filipinos, Siberian, Mongolians, Chinos, Romans, Spaniards, Anglo-Saxons, this is what we're speaking of. But when we're looking at this illustration and we see these brown people with the gold hoop earrings, with the braids on their head, with the gold band around their biceps, the gold band right under their knees, the gold band on their ankles, the gold bracelets, the feathered crown. These are the Americans. And wherever you go in the Americas, the indigenous people look like this, and the indigenous people, just like in your family, are all shades of brown. And some, you know why you call some of them red? It's people who I grew up, homie who I grew up with called Dirty Red. And he's called that. I don't have to tell you why he called that. Because his hair got a reddish tint and his skin got a reddish tint to it. Just like another shorty, another homie I grew up with who lived in the projects, his name was Seneca. Seneca, yeah, just like the tribe on the East Coast. He was another one. His hair was red, tinted red. His skin was tinted red. Then you got those of us they call yellow bone, like lemon meringue. Then you got what, like French vanilla. Then you got copper. Then you got tan. Then you got dark, burnt copper, all manner of complexions of brown. All for the environment that we come from, that we sprouted up from. We walk around in the woods and we look like we a part of the woods. Nothing more, nothing less. All this complexion and color that came with this dude in the illustration right here. Because if you look at it in the illustration, his complexion is the same color as the paper. WIGHT means creature. Yeah, his creator was holding a petri dish or something like that, a test tube or something like that. You see the people in the picture, in the illustration. Those are the people who he saw when he got here. Again, I don't know why he came here. But just like 1619 is falsely said to be the beginning or the origin of the people, us, the Americans, who they falsely term Black Americans and African Americans, 1619 was said to be our beginning on this American soil. Just as the 1400s were said to be the beginning of America. Who would have thought that the identity theft would have started when he reached these shores? Think about it. He's just landing on the American soil. Those people, those sisters and brothers right there are the Americans. But today, his people are calling themselves Americans. Why would someone do that? Why would someone do that? And you don't even call yourself an American. You call yourself something else. You call yourself something that somebody else told you to call yourself. Other than the only Americans that were here and that are still here today. Go outside. Go down the street. Go to the store. Go to the gas station. Go anywhere outside. And the people who you term Black Americans or African Americans or you are the only Americans here. Let's shake it. The Conquest of America, Tsvetan Todorov, translated by Richard Howard. Now look at the cover of this book. Look at the cover of this book. I forgot the date of this book. I didn't copy the copyright page, and yeah, I'm not going to get the book so I can look at what the date is of the book, but look at how the Americans look on this book. We just saw the picture that I showed you. This picture's not in this book. You can pull this picture up. Those people who he came in contact with do not look like this book cover. Listen, it almost seems impossible to tell you all the truth, and there's nothing wrong with that. This is his story. You got a story too. Let's hear it. The Conquest of America, Tsvetan Todorov, translated by Richard Howard. First of all, the discovery of America or of the Americans is certainly the most astonishing encounter of our history. We do not have the same sense of radical difference in the discovery of other continents and of other peoples. Europeans have never been altogether ignorant of the existence of Africa, India, or China, or India, Hindustan, Bharat, or China. Some memory of these places was always there already from the beginning because they're all one place. They're all one place. Of course, there's some sense of all these places from their beginnings. It's all one place. At the beginning of the 16th century, the Indians of America are certainly present, but nothing is known about them. Even if, as we might expect, certain images and ideas concerning other remote populations were projected upon these newly discovered beings, the encounter will never again achieve such an intensity, if indeed that is the word to use. The 16th century perpetrated the greatest genocide in human history. Not only with violence and physical, more than that, like you've heard many times, and so have I, a paper genocide. He says that he would abandon everything. This is Columbus. He says that he would abandon everything to discover more lands and to probe these secrets. What he most dearly desired, he says, was to discover more. At another moment, he wonders, I do not write how great will be the benefit to be derived hence. It is certain, Lord Princes, that when there are such lands, there should be profitable things without number. But I tarried not in any harbor, because I sought to see the most countries that I could, to give the story of them to your highness. The profits which should be found there interest Columbus only secondarily. What counts are the lands and their discovery. There is nothing of the modern empirical, there is nothing of the modern empirical about Columbus. The decisive argument is an argument of authority, not of experience. He knows in advance what he will find. The concrete experience is there to illustrate a truth already possessed, not to be interrogated according to pre-established rules in order to seek the truth. From my tenderest years, I have lived the life of sailors, as I am doing even today. This occupation leads those who follow it to wish to know the secrets of this world. Columbus writes at the beginning of the book of Prophecies, 1501, we shall insist here on the word would in opposition to men, of the word world in opposition to men. He who identifies himself with the sailor's occupation has dealings with nature rather than with his kind. And in his mind, nature has assuredly more affinities with God than men have, he writes in a single impulse in the margin of Ptolemy's Geography. Admirable are the tumultuous forces of the sea. Admirable is God in the depths. Columbus's writings, and most particularly the journal of the first voyage, reveal a constant attention to all natural phenomena. Fish and birds, plants and animals are the main characters. One of his correspondents, Mosen Jom Ferrer, had written him in 1495. The great part of valuable things come from very hot regions, of which the inhabitants are black or parrots. Blacks and parrots are therefore considered as the signs, the proofs of heat, and heat as the sign of wealth. It is hardly surprising then that Columbus never fails to remark the abundance of parrots, the blackness of skins, and the intensity of the heat. The Indians who came upon the ship had understood that the admiral wanted a parrot. Now we know why. During the third voyage, he heads farther south. here the people are extremely black. Where yet? Where is Cristobal? Where Columbus at? He's in the Americas, right? Right? He in the Americas. And he said he traveled south, right? During the third voyage, he heads farther south. Here, the people are extremely black. So Cristobal, so Columbus, he's in America. He says the people are extremely black. But what I'm hearing is black Americans don't have culture. Let's shake it. Not even the Indians escape the cascade of names the first men brought back to Spain. Not even the Indians escape the cascade of names the first men brought back to Spain and rebaptized Don Juan de Castilla and Don Fernando de Aragon. He say not even the Indians escape the cascade of names. The first men brought back to Spain are baptized Don Juan de Castilla and Don Fernando de Aragon. So he didn't change their name. It's the first Indians brought back to Spain. You know, the black Indians, the black Americans brought back to Spain, were baptized. See? More than anything, he wanted to make those Christians who were not. He called them Don Juan, Don Fernando. He didn't change their name. He didn't know their name. And he didn't care. They just told you he was more into the soil, the flora and the fauna. He didn't care about the people. The people meant nothing, which meant he could be as disgusting and despicable as he wanted to in the way he treated them. See, he didn't change their name because he didn't know their name. He just knew they needed to be baptized. And later booked. This latter reaction is provoked by the Indians he encounters at the very beginning. On October 12th, 1492, seeing them, he promises himself, "If it please our Lord, at the moment of my departure, I shall take from this place 6 of them to your highness, so that they may learn to speak our language." He say, if it pleases our Lord. Who do you think he's speaking of? Who is his Lord? At the moment of my departure, I shall take from this place 6 of them to your highness. Our Lord, your highness. You tell me the difference. So that they may learn to speak our language. His Highness, I guess, was the king and queen of Spain. So he wants them to learn whatever language they're speaking over there in Spain or Portugal, that area, what have you. It wasn't American. He said, if it pleases our Lord at the moment of my departure, I shall take from this place 6 of them. Take, okay? He didn't say, I shall invite them to come back with me henceforth and sail back with me the ocean blue to meet our Lord, your Highness, King Ferdinand, and his mistress. No, he said, take. And I'm just thinking children. They always taking children. You know what I mean? Before the Indians taken back to Spain have learned to speak, the situation is one of total incomprehension. Right. They don't understand him. He don't understand them. But again, he doesn't care. He knows that the land is full of life. The situation is one of total incomprehension, or as Las Casas says in the margin of Columbus's journal, they were all groping in darkness because they did not understand what the Indians were saying. This is not shocking after all, nor even surprising. What is, on the other hand, is that Columbus regularly claims to understand what is said to him, while giving, at the same time, every proof of incomprehension. And not just incomprehension in terms of language, incomprehension in terms of nature. Nonverbal communication is scarcely more successful than the exchange of speech. Columbus prepares to land with his men on the shore. One of the Indians, whom he sees facing him, advanced into the river near the prow of the barge and delivered a long speech which the admiral failed to understand. Think about it. Think about it. Think about this. The admiral failed to understand this. Think about not your grandmother or grandparents who came from, let's just, for an example, let's just take the portion, the soil portion that we call Alabama. Not your grandparents that came from Alabama, not your great grandparents. Let's say your second great grandparents that came from Alabama. Let's say the grandparents that was born in like between 1840 and 1870. Let's say them. How many people today walking around here would understand them when they get to talking? Because you and me, even though we right about now, we like 50% English, 50%, we 50% trade language, 50% American right now in terms of language. So we know how to be understood by foreigners, right? But imagine your second and third great grandparents in the South. You couldn't even understand a lot of what they were saying once they get talking. So you know they don't understand shit. And Columbus, he's in that part of Afro-Eurasia that is termed as Spain and Portugal and all that Italy and all that Mediterranean, you know what I mean? So they don't understand one another. And I'm pretty sure the Americans, your ancestors, your people, I ain't talking about Fat Joe people. Your people, I'm pretty sure they couldn't even understand why they had so much clothes on. Like, why do he got slippers on in the woods? He got steppers on. Why he got ruffled shirt on? Why he got a 6-piece suit on? And he traveling for months. You know he stank. You know he stank. You know he's smelling like cold cuts. Thirsty. Begging for a popsicle. One of the Indians whom he sees facing him advanced into the river near the prow of the barge and delivered a long speech which the admiral, Columbus, failed to understand, at which we are not surprised. But he observed that the other Indians from time to time raised their hands toward the sky and uttered a great shout. The admiral surmised that they were assuring him that his coming was a welcome event, typical example of wishful thinking. But he saw the face of the Indian whom he had taken with him and who understands the language change color, turn yellow as wax, and tremble mightily, while saying by signs that the admiral should leave the river because they sought to kill him. 3/12/1492. Again, we may wonder if Columbus has realized what the second Indian was telling him by signs. And here is another example of symbolic communication about as successful as the rest. I greatly desired to hold converse with them, and yet I had nothing with me which I might show them to make them come near, except for a tambourine, which I had brought up on the foredeck, and which I ordered beaten so that several young men could dance to it, thinking that they would come to see the festivity. But as soon as they saw the tambourine beaten and the men dancing, all dropped the oars, took up their bows, stretched them, each man covering himself with his shield, and they began raining arrows upon us. Letter to the Sovereigns, 831. What's that? 1498. But as soon as they saw the tambourines beaten and the men dancing, all dropped the oars, took up their bows, stretched them, each man covering himself with his shield, and they began raining arrows upon us. So after Columbus had his people start banging on the tambourines with no rhythm and doing a rhythmless dance, the niggas started raining arrows upon them. beautiful. Columbus does not succeed in his human communication because he is not interested in them. Columbus does not succeed in his human communications because he is not interested in them. We read in his journal for December 6, 1492, that the Indians he has taken on board his ship try to escape and are distressed to find themselves far from their island. Say what you want. This is what the slave trade was all about. And stop calling y'all people slaves. Stop calling y'all people slaves. I work, can't see in the morning, they can't see at night. You do too. Tomorrow morning you will be at work. Some of y'all going to work before the sun come up. Some of y'all gonna get home after the sun go down. Stop calling your people slaves. Because all they was doing was kidnapping people, trafficking people, mostly women and children. That's all these people was doing. I can't tell you the countless amount of times I've read that, oh, they saw a little boy in the woods and they grabbed him, took him with them. You want to think about what they was doing. Well, they do it today as well. They brought that with them too. You know, that type of. These people are good, Columbus declares at the start, without any concern to ground his affirmation. They are the best people in the world and the most peaceable. December 16, 1492, the admiral said that he cannot believe that a man has ever seen people so good-hearted. December 21st, 1492, I do not believe that in all the world there are better men any more than there are better lands. December 25th, 1492, he's speaking of your ancestors. He's speaking of the Americans. Regardless of what tribe, Taino, Arawak, no matter what tribe you come from, no matter what soil portion you come from in the Americas, take away the lines on the map. No matter what these foreigners have called the different tribes, oh, it's 500 different tribes in North America. No matter what they've called you, I'm more interested in the name that your family gave, your people gave you. My people gave me a name. That's my name. Until I see something where my people call themselves this particular thing, I'm gonna be satisfied with American Indian, okay? But check this out. He say, I do not believe that in all the world, you hear this? Think about that. I can't talk about the world. I can't relate to the world just like I can't relate to space. Just like I can't relate to nobody talking about planets and the moon and sun and stars and shit. I can't relate to none of that. I've only seen what I've seen, and I have not seen, quote, the world, end quote. Apparently Columbus has. He was lost. If he was lost, why are the islands still called the West Indies when at one point the islands, along with Florida, along with Georgia, etc., was called the West Indies? Why are the islands still called the West Indies if he was lost? Wouldn't they have fixed that? Yeah, well, the American Indians live in the West Indies. The American Indies, the American Indians live in India, right? These people are good, Columbus declares at the start. I do not believe that in all the world, their world was Afro-Eurasia. And all those people on that soil portion you call Afro-Eurasia, unlearn everything you learned. Because those people aren't even who you think they are. And in a lot of cases, they aren't who they think they are. I do not believe that in all the world there are better men, and more than there are better lands. Wow. That's it. We really don't have to go no farther. He said wherever he say, you know a place is wealth. You know a place has wealth when there is heat, black people dodge the hijack, and parrots. What about toucans? The ready enchantment with men and land suggests the spirit in which Columbus writes and the little confidence we can grant to the descriptive qualities of his remarks. Further, when he knows the Indians better, he will leap to the other extreme, which is not thereby a source of information worthier of belief. Shipwrecked on Jamaica, he sees himself surrounded by a million savages, filled with cruelty and inimical to us. He said, further, when he knows the Indians better, he say Columbus, he say the ready enchantment with men and land suggests the spirit in which Columbus writes and the little confidence we can grant to the descriptive qualities of his remarks. Further, when he knows the Indians better, he will leap to the other extreme, which is not thereby a source of information worthier of belief. Shipwrecked on Jamaica. Shout out to Jamaica and the Jamaicans and tell me if I'm wrong, the Caribs, the Arawak, the Taino. I don't know. You tell me. Comment section is right there. Educate me about Jamaica. The Americas. Shipwrecked on Jamaica, he sees himself surrounded by a million savages, filled with cruelty and inimical to us. You know what changed? Well, he tells you what changed. He really don't care about no human, period. He ran across some niggas that wasn't showing their teeth, probably. What you think? Let's shake it. Two features of the Indians seem, at first sight, less predictable than the rest: their generosity and their cowardice. But as we read on in Columbus's description, we perceive that these assertions tell us more about Columbus than about the Indians. Lacking words, Indians and Spaniards exchange at the first meeting various small objects, and Columbus increasingly praises the generosity of the Indians, who give everything for nothing. It sometimes borders, he decides, on stupidity. Why do they value a piece of glass quite as much as a coin, and a worthless piece of small change as much as a gold piece? Because those things are abundant. Those things are the equivalent of a dandelion leaf. They come from the soil just as we do. You are the one, Columbus, who would drool and kill your own family for gold, which is dusted on the sands in the Caribbean. I have given, he writes, many other things of slight value from which they took great pleasure. They're appreciative, kind people. All that they have, they give for any trifle. We offer them so that they take in exchange pieces of crockery and fragments of glass goblets. For anything at all we give them without ever saying it is too little, they immediately give us whatever they possess. Whether it is a thing of value or a thing of little cost, whatever the object then given them in exchange, and whatever it is worth, they are pleased. Nor, more than in the case of languages, does Columbus understand that values are conventional, that gold is not more precious than glass in itself, but only in the European system of exchange. Hence, when he concludes this description of the exchanges by saying, even bits of broken cask hoops they took in exchange for whatever they had, like beasts. We have the impression that in this case it is Columbus who is worthy of the comparison. A different system of exchange is for him equivalent to the absence of a system, from which he infers the bestial character of the Indians. See? You are dealing with the real savage and his descendants. Yep. A lot of the people who you see today, don't get me wrong, we have a lot of people who are kind, who are generous, who are understanding, but being natural and connected to nature is one thing. Being kind is something else. The soil portion that you come from needs you, and you need it. If you aren't on the soil portion that you come from, hence why the indigenous people of the place that we term as Mexico, Central America, South, hence those people, the people who come from the islands, the people who come from Puerto Rico or Borinquen, or what the indigenous people called it, those people, you don't see those people. Why? Because those people are doing the same thing that you're doing. They're living life. They're from the Americas. Why would they want to leave their soil portion? Just like why would you want to leave your soil portion? It's not natural. It's not a natural thing. Yes, some people might say, well, the earth is our oyster. Again, I know nothing about the earth or called the world. I don't know anything about the world. All I know is the soil portion that I come from. And if you ain't on your soil portion, you need to pack up your people. And yeah. Columbus is the beast. Columbus is symbolic of the foreigner. Columbus is symbolic of the foreigner who don't know when to go home. One night, okay. 2 nights, okay. Damn, you don't understand. Yo, we need some privacy. You need to go home, man. You wearing out your welcome. He wore out his welcome. Columbus is the savage. Whenever you read savage, Columbus is the savage. I'm not saying whatever niggas was doing, whatever we was doing here, we was the niggas. Everybody got issues. But the savage bestial nature, that savage bestial quality, the foreigner brought that here. But the important thing is that these who are not already Christians can only be slaves. There is no middle path. Hence, he foresees that the ships that transport herds of cattle from Europe to America will be loaded with slaves on the return journey. Columbus foresees that the ships that transport herds of cattle from Europe to America will be loaded with slaves, will be loaded with Indian men, women, and children, mostly women and children, will be loaded with men, women, and children, American Indians, on the return journey. He gonna take them. He gonna take your people back. He gonna take your people with him to Europe, Spain, Portugal. If you make it, if you even make it. The same ships that they transport herds of cattle from Europe to America with. Why they bringing that shit here, man? What a disgusting group of people, man. But Columbus writes again in September 1498, "From here one might send, in the name of the Holy Trinity, as many slaves as could be sold, as well as a quantity of Brazil timber. If the information I have is correct, it appears that we could sell 4,000 slaves who might be worth 20 millions and more." Letter to the Sovereign, September 1498. Michel de Quenil, a member of the second expedition, has left one of the rare accounts describing in detail how the slave trade functioned at its inception. His narrative permits us no illusions as to how the Indians were perceived. When our caravels, our small ships, were to leave for Spain, we gathered in our settlement 1,600 male and female persons of these Indians, and of these we embarked in our caravels on February 17th, 1495. 550 souls among the healthiest males and females. For those who remained, we let it be known in the vicinity that anyone who wanted to take some of them could do so to the amount desired, which was done. So the Americans' kindness I'm not even sure Columbus understood kindness. Of course, he had the Your Highness's ear. So he was used to condescension, ambition, vanity, bestiality, sodomy. Kindness was seen as cowardice to him, stupidity. We say, hey, you can't make people of today pay for the sins of their ancestors. But one thing, make no mistake, they are their ancestors, and so are you. You are your ancestors. These are illustrations, I guess, from the same group of publications regarding Columbus. You know, as you can see in some pictures, he's speaking with, I guess, cartographers. Some look like he's speaking with popes and priests. And you see an illustration to the rough trip that the Santa Maria had getting here. Perilous journey. And then down here you see the American Indians, your ancestors, the people who he came in contact with their typical crown, feather crown, their feather kilts of different colors. Many times they were red, white, and blue. You know, the original red, white, and blue. The people who rocked that. And they always had their tobacco. They always had their bow and arrows. And they were kind. And look, I'm not saying that your ancestors or the American Indians or the people, that they term Black Americans today. I'm not saying that these people were pushovers. I'm not saying that. I'm not the one who called my ancestors slaves. They were slaves to the enslavers. They were slaves to these disgusting creatures. They weren't slaves to their parents, to their cousins, aunties, uncles, nephews, nieces, brothers, sisters, friends, extended friends and family. They weren't no slaves. Why do you call your people slaves? 'Cause Columbus did it? 'Cause he saw your people as that? He was an opportunist. He was an opportunist. Ambition was his game. He didn't see parrots and brown, dark-skinned brown people and heat as a sign of wealth. He saw what he could sell something for as a sign of wealth. Selling stuff to get more stuff. What a shallow existence. Take a look. It looks like the people, it looks like the Americans, the American Indians, the ones with the short naturals. You see the women at the top with the big earrings, hoop earrings. They always got gold on. And when he brought them back, and he seems to have brought with him pineapples and whatnot, the people were in awe. These are the people of that soil portion called America. These are the kind people of America. Now, this illustration is probably deceiving. Because if what I'm seeing is the American Indians after they were so-called brought back to Europe, there's a lot of deception in that. Because I'm sure a lot of these people died. I'm sure a lot of these people died just because of the weather. Just being around all these filthy, stinking people that they were not used to. What you think? He just could not leave those blacks in America living amongst the parrots in the heat, gold dust in the sands on the shore, He could not ignore that level of wealth. Do the right thing.